Last week I was playing at the 606 Jazz Club here in London. I arrived at the gig, set up my gear and got ready for soundcheck. But here's the thing, during the soundcheck we didn't actually play a full song. Instead, the drummer kicked off with a groove and the bass player jumped in as well. And this is something that happens all of the time in live music. It's called jamming. But what do you play when you're just jamming? How do you come up with a part that actually sounds good and works with the groove? Well, in this video, I'm going to answer all of that for you and show you 3 different approaches that you can use next time you're jamming on a chord sequence. Let's dive in. To get the most out of this lesson, don't forget to grab your free PDF lesson book, which contains the notation and sheet music for every step of the video, along with the backing tracks I'm using as well. You can either scan this QR code or click the link in the video description. Okay, let's kick off by learning the chord sequence we're going to be jamming over. It's very, very simple. It's only 2 chords. We're going to go between D minor 7, which is there, a D, an F, an A and a C, moving to G7, which is here, G, B, D and F. And it's actually a very common chord sequence. It's what we call a 2-5. It's essentially a chord sequence in the key of C. So if we think of C major, chord 2 would be D minor 7, chord 5 would be G7, and chord 1 would usually be C major 7, which is there. So this is a very common building block of chord sequences, except we're not going to that C chord, we're just going between the 2 and the 5. So the first thing we're going to look at is a piano part, and we're going to use pads. Now, if you're new to the channel, pads are basically held chords. You hold the chord on for however long that chord lasts. And you can see here I'm not playing those root position shapes. That's not going to sound great. All those notes are moving such a long distance to get to the next chord. We don't want that. What I'm actually going to be doing is using little voicings in my right hand to create what we call smooth chord movements. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. There are my shapes there, and you can see rather than playing the chord like that, I've just rearranged the notes. So I've now got F at the top, then a D, then a C, then an A. Exactly the same notes in a different order. And then when I move to that G7, I go here. I'll just do that shift for you once more. Now it's interesting, some notes have stayed the same and some notes have changed. This note at the top has remained the same. Look, it stays on that F through both chords, and that is really good. If you can find a note that remains the same through a chord sequence, that creates like a glue. It holds everything together, it binds it all together. And you can see this C is moving down to a B. Okay, it's moving from the 7th of the D minor to the 3rd of the G7. And this A is actually staying where it is as well. And that's like a little colour note. If you really want to know, that's actually the 9th of the G7. Okay, so you could think of this like a G9 chord now. We've tweaked the chord very slightly. So there is our little pattern we're going to be playing with. And to kick off with, we're just going to be playing those chords bang on the beat, really, really precise. Laying it down, not being too busy, not getting in the way. We're just kind of playing the harmony, playing the changes. Let's have a go at doing this with the track, then I'll show you another way of how you can kind of take this up a gear. You want to make sure you're using quite a lot of weight when you're playing. Don't be too gentle, particularly with grooves like this. Okay, let's take this up a gear now. We're still going to be using the same voicings, but we're going to be adding in a little bit more rhythm. Let me show you this. This is very much something Jamiroquai would do. I don't know if you know the track Virtual Insanity, but if you haven't checked it out, the style here is very similar to the opening of that track. What I'm doing is I'm locking into the 16th note. Okay, so the 16th note sounds like this. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. I'm hearing that all of the time in my head when I'm playing. And what I'm doing in my left hand is I'm locking into that 16th note and I'm playing octaves to get me to that low D, okay? So I'm doing a D at the top, going to that D there. And the rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm doing the same thing on the G. Did you see that? I went D, G. Rather than doing an octave on the G, I think I'm gonna stick with that D and I'm gonna go. So my left hand's just gonna be going between. If I add in the right now, now what am I doing with my right hand? Let me show you. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. This chord is actually coming in on the second semiquaver or 16th note, depending on how you think of it, of the bar. So if we were counting it 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a, this chord would come in on the 1 E. 2, 3, 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E. Do you see that? I'm basically playing the 16th note before the bar, the 16th note at the beginning of the bar, and the 1 directly next to it, okay? It's quite a lot going on. It goes left hand thumb, then your root note, then your right hand. That's the order. Let me have a go at playing this through with the track. There's a lot going on with this one. Do you see how all we've done, though, is tweak the very simple pads? Not much has changed. Still the same chords, still the same root note. We've just added in that little skip in our left hand and that little push of the chord in our right. Let's give this a go with the backing track. This is a Wurlitzer. If you haven't played a whirly before, there are so many kind of iconic songs that use the Wurlitzer. You can still do this on a piano. All of these groove patterns still work on a piano. I just thought I'd change things up just because I really like doing that. And sometimes I find when I do change the sound up I'm using, it makes me play differently. Just something to kind of bear in mind. Have a go at doing that. If you're playing a keyboard, try changing the sound and see if it affects how you play and the sorts of ideas you might come up with. Right, this pattern is very, very slightly different. Because we're using that Wurlitzer sound, we're going to have a repeated pattern in our right hand. This one's so much fun to play. Sometimes it's called wood chopping in your right hand because it sounds literally like someone kind of chopping up wood. Bap, 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 bap. I'm really locking into that 8th note. I'm hearing that all of the time in my head. And I've tweaked the voicings I'm using ever so slightly. Check this out. So for the D minor 7, I'm literally just using an F major triad in my right hand. And then when we go to the G7, the only note that is moving in my right hand is this B. It's gone from a C down to a B. Do you see though, we've kept that rule of keeping stuff on the top if we can, okay? That A, and actually the F as well, remains consistent through both of the chords. It really helps to glue things together. So that's the shape we're doing, okay? And what we're doing is we're doing 4 on each. We're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or actually a better way to think of it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. In our left hand, we're just going to be kind of playing the bass notes, a little bass kind of pattern that outlines the chord movement. Check this out. That's the pattern. If you're learning this at home and you're working through it with the PDF lesson book, get it together hand separately. That's really going to help you here, okay? Don't try and put things together straight away. Make sure you can play along with the track, keeping those 8th notes really consistent, and make sure you can really lock in your left hand with that groove. I'm going to have a go at putting them straight together. I'm going to play it through with this track. Let's give it a go. Really dig in with your right hand. Dig in means play it really loudly, spiky. Yeah, it makes such a difference when you play it like that. And what I'm actually doing, check this out, I'm actually hitting where the snare falls. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So on beat 2 and 4, I'm playing it with a bit more of an accent. And that's another way you can really help connect with the kind of drum groove and really lock in. Okay, let's see if we can just spice this up a little bit. We're going to keep our right hand the same, but we're going to tweak our left hand. This is kind of like an additional level to it if you want to take it up a gear. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be punctuating my right hand with my left hand, okay? I'm not going to be playing that bass line anymore. I'm going to be playing occasional notes that go in the gaps of my right hand. Let me give you a little, I'll give you a little blast first of all what this sounds like. Do you see what's actually going on here? My left hand is kind of preempting the chord change. So watch it really slowly. Did you see there? Just before we moved to the G7, my left hand played that G. And even though we're not quite on the G7 at that point, it's sort of still got another 16th note to go. It just kicks it. It kind of gives the music a bit of a kick along. So in my left hand, I'm thinking 1 Eander, 2 Eander, 3 Eander, 4 Eander. And on the last 16th note of beat 2 and beat 4, I'm playing a note in my left hand. So each time I'm playing on that last 16th, the bass note of the next chord that's coming up. Does that make sense? I'll talk you through it. Watch. D minor 7, G, D, G. Do you see that? I'm gonna have a go at doing this with the track. Have a listen. Okay, this is a clav sound, right? Clavs are so much fun to play. Again, you can still play this on the piano, but if you want to change things up and experiment with some new sounds, what I'm going to show you will work really well on a clav. Let me just show you the pattern we're going to be learning. What I'm doing here is I'm really locking into that 16th note again, and in my right hand, I'm using notes from the D blues scale. So if you haven't heard of this scale, here it is: D, F, G, A flat, A, C, and D. And all I've done is I've come up with a little riff that I can play over and over. Quite often, clav parts are based on repeated patterns, okay? What you'll want to do is come up with a little phrase and keep on repeating it, because that's kind of what gives the music its consistency. It helps lock into the drum groove as well. Here's the riff I'm using. 3, 4. I'll do it a little bit slower for you. Here we go. 3, 4. There it is. Again, it's just using notes from the blues scale, but that kind of repeated pattern really helps it give it that consistency. We're just going to go over and over with that. And in my left hand, I'm just going to be playing octaves. I'm actually only playing the D. I'm not playing anything on the G chord. I'm leaving that part of the bar free. There's a lot going on in my right hand at that point. I'll play it together just so you can see it. I'll just do the pattern really slow so you can see how it all fits together. There it is. Okay, let's have a go at doing this with the backing track. Now, if I wanted to get a little bit more creative with this and kind of make it my own, what I'd probably do is I'd stick with the blues scale in my right hand, but I wouldn't necessarily play the same thing every time. I'd still be locking in with that 16th note, dagger, 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 but I'd be a little bit more free with my right hand. So this is something you can try if you really want to kind of push yourself and see if you can get a bit more creative. I'm going to have a go at doing that now. I'm pretty much going to stick with that octave jump in my left hand, maybe adding a few little extra punctuation notes, but it's pretty much going to be a bit more fluid this time. I'm not quite sure what's going to come out, but I'm going to give it a go, right? Blues scale in my right hand, octaves in my left with a few little extra punctuations. Let's give it a go with a track. Now, if you enjoyed this video, I think you're going to love this one up here, where I break down my full process for how to play funk. Go give that video a click, and I'll see you over there.